Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Journey with Mary. This is John Carpenter, and I will lead you through our show tonight. We're not only journeying with Mary, but we're down in Africa, which is why that song was played tonight. Down in Africa. We're going to Rwanda, Africa, for an awesome apparition of the Virgin Mary. It began in 1981, and we'll get to that in a minute. The same year that Medjugorje started in 1981. So it just shows that Mary can be in several places in the same years and working very hard to get our attention. So anyway, what this show does is we take a look every week at the appearances of the Virgin Mary. Many people aren't even aware that this happens. It didn't start because we asked it to or expected it to, but it began happening as far back as 40 AD and has continued every year since. And so we're closing in on 2,600 or 2,700, somewhere around there, documented sightings, and in a little less than 2,000 years. So obviously she's been very busy. What we're trying to do with this show is bring you the best information, carefully researched, and its approval rating with the church, and which almost all of these are approved by the church or in the process, because my estimation, it takes roughly about 53 years on average to get approval. That's a long time when you think of an average, 53 years. A lot of people wouldn't live that long to know. So we don't always wait 53 years to talk about it. So we will always let you know the status, though, of the investigations. And so this week, Donald Hartley is still taking it easy, resting up. He had a stroke and is recovering, and he's doing okay. He just needs to take it easy and get his full strength and get lots of rest. He doesn't want to tax himself right now. We certainly appreciate that because he's the founder and the core of all these programs. Luckily, he taught me how to run the studio, and the show goes on. So anyway, we will get to our apparition story in a moment, but first of all, we have two of our research team with us. We have both Mike from New Jersey and Kathy from Bourbon, Mexico, Missouri. Sorry, Kathy, I didn't mean to put you in Mexico there for a moment.
I speak some pretty thick hillbilly to be living in Mexico, I think.
Right.
Well, at least you go south for the winter.
Yeah, we just got winter here today. It was all nice until today.
Oh, my gosh. I know. I'm in Springfield, Missouri. I know.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It was 1 degree with wind chill this morning. 1 degree.
Yeah, I hate winter.
Yeah. But
well, you know
anyway.
how to warm things up, don't you?
How's that, Mike?
Go ahead.
Well, what you do is you gather as many politicians as you can in one place. Have them start making speeches, and all that hot air ought to do something.
Yeah, I don't want them in my front yard. So anyway, glad you're all with me, and we'll be journeying to Rwanda in just a moment. Anything new from any area that you're in out there in New Jersey or here in Missouri? Any reports of anything you want to bring up? Actually, while you're thinking about that, I got a call from Joseph from Colorado. He was checking in, and poor guy, he's so tired, but he says he can't quit because if he takes one day off, he wonders which life he didn't save. Think about that. He's well over 1,000.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's well over 1,000, about 1,010 saves. Babies not being aborted. he has talked and fought and encouraged and bribed or whatever he could do to get them not to go through with it.
I think his last figure was something around 1086 or something like that.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt it. He's well over 1,000 now, and he can't stop. I mean, he feels like he goes into debt. He says because he buys stuff like car seats to give them and charges everything, and somehow none of the churches, he told me, around him support or raise funds or do anything to help him out. I'm thinking with the awesome work that he's doing, I can't believe that no church will get behind him or raise funds or anything to support the wonderful work he's doing. I just don't get that, but at least he's doing it. And I always tease him about that we need to rent an arena and have those 1,000 or 2,000 children show up and cheer him one day for all their lives being saved.
John, I wonder if Joseph is making any kind of request to the area churches. If he doesn't let himself be known, they don't even know he's around.
Well, he says he told me he's talked to a couple of priests, and they just say, "Oh, that's good," and then they go on, and he saved over 1,000 babies. I mean, come on, that's saintly, in my opinion. It's very saintly. So, anyway, I just wanted to update you that he did check in. He was worried about Donald, of course, but so we talked about everything, and bless his heart, he's such a warrior. And I never thought about that, though. If he misses one day, he wonders, who did he not save? And gosh, it's almost like a guilt trip. Yeah, it's almost like a guilt trip. If you don't show up, who died, that you could have saved? So he is so committed, and it's just an amazing ministry and effort on his part. I really say, Mike, we need to get some screenwriters and do his story, and it would be an Oscar award-winning movie. It would be such an awesome story.
I've got the studio to produce it.
I hear you.
What are we waiting for?
I don't know. You got a writer here. You got a studio there.
Yeah, a published author. Hey, let's see. What was his name again? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's an excellent idea. That is an excellent idea.
It really is.
I read an article once on LifeSite News about a man who stood outside of a abortion mill, and he that was his everyday thing. He was there every day, and I think his name was John. And they said he was crazy, and he said he was. He said he was crazy for Jesus and for the babies he needed to save. He sounds like Thompson.
I like that. Oh, well, anyway, we'll have to figure something out. I wish he lived a little closer. I'd love to just go and sit and record him telling his stories and be able to write it all up. But he's just had so much happen. It's just amazing. It would be an amazing story to tell. All right. Well, we are going to Africa, down in Africa. And in Africa, we're going to Rwanda. The years are 1981 through 1989. A little town, a little village, actually, of Kibeho. And Kibeho is a small African village in the mountainous terrain of Rwanda. This amazing and inspirational story would never have been known to any of us if it had not been for the miraculous survival during that country's horrible genocide of author Immaculée Ilibagiza, who I have met and so glad to have gotten to know. She revealed the details of Blessed Mary's visits in her book called Our Lady of Kibeho, which just came out about 10 years ago. The encounters began on Saturday, November 28th, 1981, with the first visionary, Alphonsine. Now, Alphonsine's at like a high school, and this is what happened to her that day. She's 16 years old, and she was away at a boarding school helping out in the cafeteria when she heard somebody in a strong but lovely voice, quote, soft as air and sweeter than music, unquote. And that voice said, my child. Going out into a hallway, she immediately saw a brilliant, luminous white cloud materializing in midair a few feet in front of her. An incredibly beautiful lady emerged from the cloud, floating between the floor and the ceiling in a pool of shimmering light. She wore a flowing, seamless white dress with a white veil that covered her hair. Her hands were clasped in front of her in a gesture of prayer, her slender fingers pointing toward heaven. The girl said that her skin and complexion was of incomparable beauty. She wore no shoes, just like all the villagers. As the beautiful figure drifted toward the girl, her feet never touched the ground. Waves of love emanated from Mary. Alphonsine felt compelled to drop to her knees, sensing a divine presence. Who are you? She asked. I am the mother of the Word, replied Mary. And then Mary asked the amazed girl, of all things in heaven, what makes you happy? Alphonsine replied immediately, I love God and his mother, who have given us their Son, who has saved us. Mary replied, smiling, and she said, quote, it is true to assure you of this. I have heard your prayers. I would like it if your companions had more faith, because some of them do not believe enough. I want people to trust and love me as a mother, because I want to lead them to my Son, Jesus. Now watch as I return to heaven to be with my Son. Then Mary smiled and rose gracefully upward, vanishing into the cloud's dwindling light. The girl collapsed on the floor in a stupor and could not be roused for 15 minutes. Almost everyone in the dining room had heard her speaking to someone. Now a group was in the hallway trying to revive her. She was totally exhausted and had much trouble getting to her feet. When told of her experience, nobody believed her. As more experiences continued, so did the harsh ridicule, teasing, and hurtful comments. All right, I'll stop there for a moment. Another beautiful lady in a bright light appearing to a young girl, Anne, who drops to her knees and is mesmerized. Pretty typical beginning, isn't it, guys?
Oh, we've seen this before.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Like I was saying about Medjugorje, it's hard to be a seer because this happens all the time, and you're under such scrutiny. And how could they do that, all 6 of them, for 40 years, and it be a lie, you know?
Right.
And there's a spot in the Narnia stories where the older children, after Lucy tells them that she went through the wardrobe into Narnia and she came back, and she tells the older children about it, and they go to the professor and they say, she's telling us this extraordinary story and we can't believe it. And he says, why? Has Lucy ever lied to you? And they said, no. And he goes, well, why wouldn't you believe her?
That's a very good point. Well, and just to follow up on what you were saying, imagine taking 6 random teenagers in 1981 and for all 6 of them 40 years later to have never wavered from their story, their religion, their faith, and everything, and to have survived hundreds of medical and scientific and psychological tests without any ailment or problem or explanation whatsoever. And that's just the beginning of the proof, but, I mean, you just can't. And I know people saw this video online where one of the visionaries blinked or moved a little bit when someone, put a hand near their face, and they say, oh, that proves it's all fake. Well, first of all, in all the apparitions, sometimes the visionaries aren't fully into the apparition yet, or some of them pop in and out of the trances too. That's been happened. So it doesn't surprise me that someone might have blinked or moved. But meanwhile, when the scientists tested her, they could touch her eyes, they could do all sorts of things to her, and she never wavered one bit with all the scientific tests. And here's the other thing I want to just add to that. The logic is so faulty. That'd be like if there was a fourth visionary at Fatima, and that fourth visionary was found to be maybe phony. Do you then throw out Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta just because someone else blinked or moved? The logic is so crazy. If one person blinks, that makes all six of them phony. It's just horrible internet logic or illogical logic that they're using. And it just makes me laugh, really, because after all this painstaking research and scientific investigation for years, and then someone sees an eye blink and says, oh, there it is, it's proof, it's all phony. It's like, get a life.
Mr. Spock would probably have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, really. But anyway, so here we are with Cabejo, another visionary entranced by a beautiful woman in a brilliant light with that musical, sweet voice. And we've heard that in about 15 other apparitions. In my first book, I put all those quotes one right after another talking about how her voice sounds. And so often they say it's sweet, it's musical, it's like air, just all these descriptions. And it's interesting that even though they can't quite nail down how it really is, they're all trying to say the same kind of thing. So it's here again, we've got her voice sounding sweeter than music and like puffs of air. It's just interesting. All right, well, moving on. Then Mary smiled. Oh, yeah, we covered that. Okay, so Alfonsine's having more appearances, but the kids are laughing at her. They think she's crazy, So on one occasion, Alfonsine was walking along with a group of girls when she suddenly dropped to her knees as though she had been shot. She landed heavily on her knees and stared at the ceiling exactly as she had the day before. Her face lit up in ecstasy, smiling peacefully with tears of joy running down her cheeks. The transformation was so sudden and dramatic that some girls began to believe. Others howled with laughter, waving their hands in front of her eyes and shouting in her ears. But she did not blink, flinch, or react, which is typical of visionaries. She didn't even see the girls any longer, only the beautiful lady hovering above her, again in the same soft, glorious light. Mary was the, quote, most beautiful woman, unquote, she had ever seen, and said her skin was neither black nor white, but shined like polished ivory. She did not tell the girls what Mary was giving her important message. She did not tell the girls that Mary was giving her important messages to deliver to government officials, even the Hutu president, about their policies of discrimination against the Tutsis, praying the rosary every day, following the 10 Commandments, etc. Well, on another occasion, her classmates would toss rosaries at her while in ecstasy, trying to hook them on her head like a ring toss game. Some girls were respectful and laid their rosaries in front of her, hoping that Mary might bless them. When Mary told Alfonsine to pick them up so she could bless them, the girl reached blindly into the pile of all the rosaries. unaware of the girls around her, and managed to only select those from the pile of the respectful girls. Those from the hecklers, quote, stuck to the ground like anchors and could not be lifted. All right.
How do you fake that? How do you fake
exactly. And just like a garabandal, the girls could just reach for the items and return them to the rightful owners without even looking, just staring at Mary, and Mary would direct them to the right person. And here she reaches into the pile and only selects the ones of the respectful girls, never looking really at the pile or even seeing the girls. She just reaches down and Mary directs her to the right ones. And the bad girls, the rosaries couldn't be lifted. So I love it when heaven plays those little tricks. I don't know. It's just it's clever. It's a way of saying, yeah, you think you're cute? Watch this. Your rosary won't move. But anyway.
That's similar to Garabandal. At Garabandal, when they would have just a wad of rosaries and other things, and the girls blindly, while in ecstasy looking up, they would hand all the rosaries to the correct people who they belonged to without ever knowing.
Yeah, perfect, without any mistakes. And because Mary was pointing them to who it belonged to, she knew. So it was just another similar type of event. Well, at the end of each apparition, Mary would tell Alphonsine exactly when she would next appear. And local villagers started planning their schedules around that. Word spread like fire to many other villages, and school officials were afraid that this attention-seeking teenager was going to turn their school and parish into a national embarrassment. One of the priests gave permission for the harshest heckler, Marie Claire, to go ahead and torment her even further. Ooh. So she organized pull her hair, twist her fingers, pinch her hard, scream in her ears, and shine a powerful flashlight into her eyes. But Alphonsine had no reaction whatsoever to any of this because she was in an ecstasy with the Virgin Mary. One day, Marie Claire held a burning candle under her right arm. Still no reaction. The priest, who was encouraging the harassment in order to expose her as a fake, now told Marie Claire to stick a long needle several inches deep into her arm during the next ecstasy. She did, and Alphonsine still showed no response as she continued to happily chat with Mary. But she started begging Mary to let other students see her, because Alphonsine was getting tired of the disbelief and ridicule. All right, I'll stop there for a second. Obviously, she's not faking it with all those efforts to distract her, cause her pain, expose her. And I tell you what, I don't know what happened with that priest in particular that was encouraging this, but I'm sure heaven wasn't very happy with him.
Well, it depends on the way you look at it. He was helping to prove that the apparitions were real.
Well, he wasn't trying to do that. He was trying to expose them as a fake because that's what he thought it was. So in other words, he didn't believe. Now, we'll come to a story soon where Mary gets even with him. It's one of my favorite stories.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I don't know. We might get to it tonight. We'll see. We'll be here a couple of weeks probably. So some of the faithful students also began praying for Mary to appear to others. And the Virgin Mary could not have responded with a better choice. Nathalie, age 17, a pious, devout, no-nonsense, respected student, also began to see Mary and received messages On January 12, 1982, feeling strangely emotional, Anathalie sat on her bed in her dormitory room with some other concerned girls. Her hands trembled violently and things went dark, and she could no longer see her friends. A blush of light illuminated a strange landscape with oddly colored flowers and crimson floating bubbles. The confusing vision scared her, making her cry. A white sphere descended from above with intense light. Then a sad woman's voice said, quote, I am sad because I have sent a message and no one will listen to the words as I desire. It is my wish for you to cry as you do now. Your tears are punishment, not because you have sinned against me, but to serve as a reminder that I can punish those who choose to ignore my messages. My child, you must pray, for the world is in a horrible way. People have turned from God and the love of my Son, Jesus. If you will work with me, I shall give you a mission to lead those lost souls back from the darkness. Unquote. The messages stress the need for prayer, deep reflection, humility, and self-sacrifice. Then Mary told her something that she had told previously to Bernadette in Lourdes. Quote, I cannot promise you happiness in this world, but I can promise you eternal happiness in the next world. Wow. Stop there for a second. So there we've got a direct quote from Lourdes showing up again in Cabejo, and I'm telling you, this girl didn't know about that. None of them knew about that. They didn't study Lourdes or the apparitions in this poor little village. And there Mary comes up with the same line that she gave Bernadette. Wow. Any thoughts?
Yeah, we could use some conversions these days. I think Rwanda could be a small occurrence of what could happen to the entire world here shortly.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll get to that. Others were impressed, but there was still a strong group of doubters led by Marie Claire, who was more outraged than ever, determined to expose fraud. Even the priest who had encouraged her harassing told her to back off now from being so mean. It would take a miracle to change Marie Claire, and then it happened. On March 1st, 1982, Marie Claire fainted during a walk in the garden between classes. She found herself in a dark area with the odor of human waste and decaying flesh, so disgusting that she felt like vomiting. She ran blindly in the darkness, hoping that she would find her school, and banged right into the front door. The darkness disappeared. As daylight returned, she found that two classmates were actually holding her up, and her clothes were drenched. They told her that she had been found semi-conscious on the floor of the chapel, and a nun had doused her with holy water to revive her. Apparently, hours had passed. Shaken and confused, she tried to recover in her bedroom, only to be back in the darkness again within minutes. This time, menacing beings approached and hovered near her, threatening her with more visits from even more dark beings. Again, she awoke on the floor of the chapel with classmates surrounding her. Alphonsine handed her a small statue of Our Lady of Lourdes and said, quote, keep her with you to protect you from the evil one. Last night, when the Blessed Mother appeared to me, she warned that the devil was planning to attack students at the school. She says that we can protect ourselves from the enemy by wearing our rosaries. All right, I'm going to stop right there for a second. Now, look, from all my research about people who visited hell, that was the beings and the darkness and the evil, horrible stuff that people report in hell. So she was getting a taste of hell for all her behaviors and her actions. It was almost like she was getting a preview of where she was going to go for all her hateful, hurtful, and horrible behaviors. What do you think of that?
That's a mother disciplining her child.
Yeah. Oh, you get a surprise like that, you're going to straighten up and fly right in no time.
Oh yeah. Well, the girls told her that she'd had some kind of a strange seizure or trance. Although confused, she remained adamant not to accept Alphonsine or her messages. For the next day in class, as they were singing a hymn, she felt strange and bolted toward the door to try to avoid a blackout. This time, she found herself in a beautiful landscape of manicured grass with dewy droplets reflecting a rainbow-colored sky. A soft voice came out of nowhere calling her name. Fearing that this still all might be a trick of the devil, she spun around, fists clenched, looking to defend herself. The soft, sweet voice, filled with motherly love, called her name again. Marie Claire responded, "Okay, you found me. I'm here. I'm ready to fight." With an affectionate laugh, Mary said, "Why would you want to fight me, my child? What is making you so afraid? Never be afraid of your mother. There's no need to be afraid of them. I promise the things of the night that threatened you will not frighten you again. Sing a song for me using these words. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." Wow. So Marie Claire felt ashamed that Mary was describing her own recent nasty behavior. She refused to sing, so an amused Mary brought an athlete into the scene to hold her hand and help her sing. Then she awakened on the chapel floor again, surrounded by 30 students who had witnessed her in a state of ecstasy, holding hands with an athlete and singing to the Blessed Virgin. Word spread within minutes across the campus that the sworn enemy of the visionaries had confessed to being visited by Mary as well. Marie Claire's rude, aggressive, and negative manner had essentially vanished overnight. Mary has her way. You guys, it's just classic. Mary has her subtle ways of getting people on board, and with the evil that was trying to, interfere with these apparitions. And I just love it when she just does her little things just to get people convinced that this is all real and all good. And straighten up. Like you said, Kathy, like you said, she is being a mother. And
yeah, mother disciplining her child. And then she shows her all the kindness and love that she needs. Yeah.
That's right. This story is so well written and so nicely detailed thanks to Immaculate Iligabiza. Well, later on, Mary showed her a black rosary, the Rosary of the Seven Sorrows, and taught Marie Claire how to pray with it, making it her mission eventually to reintroduce it to the world. Marie Claire asked Mary if her sister, who had died a year ago, was in heaven. Mary explained that she was still in purgatory, waiting. The visionary complained that their family had prayed extensively for her, so why wasn't that good enough? And Mary says, praying for your departed loved ones is of great comfort to them and of great help for the souls in purgatory. But people still must work to earn a place in heaven. However, in a few days, Mary reported back to Marie Claire that today your sister entered heaven and joined your father, much to Marie Claire's delight. So that's pretty cool. Get a report from Mary about where people stand going from purgatory to heaven. guess you put in a good word and maybe even facilitated that process. So that's pretty cool. And how excited would you be if you found that one of your relatives in purgatory made it to heaven? How cool is that? Get a report.
That would be nice. I'd like a report, but as long as they're going to heaven.
Right.
But the
Okay.
Seven Sorrows Rosary, that is important, especially for priests to meditate on the seven sorrows. Each one relates to one of the seven gifts of the Holy Spirit.
That's right. And actually, I'd learned that it was around long before this, but Mary was trying to bring it back through this apparition and get it going again. I guess it goes way back to, I think it was like way back to 600 AD or something when it was first created, but it had long since been forgotten and not used. So Mary's reviving it and bringing it to Marie Claire as her mission. And she did, by the way, follow through with that. All right, now we come to my favorite little part with that priest who didn't believe any of the girls and had pushed Marie Claire to do all this stuff. He was determined at this high school, and he called them a pack of liars, warning that these three were going to get thrown out of the school. Marie Claire approached him with a message from Mary about his, quote, unjustly tormenting her children, unquote. Now, if I were a priest and I heard that the Virgin Mary was not happy with me, I would be listening. And that he needed to do penance. Marie Claire said, quote, she wants you to kneel down tonight, hold your arms open to God, and pray your rosary 3 times, unquote. Called her a liar and ordered her to stay in her dormitory room until morning, and then he would deliver a proper punishment. But that night, the priest decided to play it safe, just in case the visions were authentic, and locked himself in his room. Oh, I know, it gets better. And he locked himself in his room, drawing the curtain shut so no one could see, and knelt on the floor. He spread his arms wide and recited the rosary 3 times. Now get a load of this. When he finished, he placed his rosary into the nightstand, placing some books and magazines on top of it before closing the drawer. Just remember that. The next morning, he summoned Marie Claire for her punishment. But she was smiling cheerfully when she arrived. And before he could even speak, she exclaimed, "Oh, Father, the Blessed Mother is very pleased that you prayed your rosary exactly as she asked you to. But she told me this morning that you shouldn't have piled all those books and magazines on top of it when you put it back in the drawer. She says to keep it with you at all times and pray with it every day," unquote. Okay, guys, how could they know that he did that and put it in the drawer with all those books and magazines on top when nobody could see into his room? It was done in private. Only heaven could know. And heaven told Marie Claire, who told him. I love it.
No, just stop for a minute and then think of his face when she said that.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
And he was stunned at the amazing validation. His heart was immediately converted, becoming now a huge supporter of the visionaries from then on. All right, so you see, Mary has her way. She just made a little comment, like, just tell him not to put all those things on top of it in the drawer next time. Nobody could know but heaven that he had done that. Nobody had seen it. Nobody.
There wasn't a hidden video camera in the room either.
No. And before he could even say anything, the girls came up and said what he had done according to Mary. He didn't even have a chance to even drop a hint or a clue or nothing. So
there's no way
I
there
love
was
that.
a hidden video. No way there was a hidden video camera, because it was 1982, and that would have been huge, and no place to hide it, and they were poor. So.
Poor village, right?
That's true.
That's right. But what a great twist. It always reminded me that when you pray, no matter where you are or what room you're in or how you're doing it, heaven knows how you're praying. This is proof. This is proof. And how could it get any better than that? To have some girl run up and say what Mary said you did last night. Oh, I love it. So, and when I've heard Immaculée speak at conferences, she always tells that little story too, because it meant a lot to her to hear that story. Because it does make you think, like, wow. So that changed the priest. Now we've got the lead heckler is a visionary, and the priest who is against it is now a huge supporter. So Mary's kind of getting her way here, and now hundreds of curious villagers want to visit the campus or hang out near the college dormitory. Valentine had her first apparition in the church on May 12, 1982, when she heard a friendly woman's voice calling softly to her, "You there, little child. Long life to you, child. I am the Mother of God." She thought she'd imagined this conversation after she looked around her. But then Mary appeared to her in her own home days later, and then began a series of visits with her that would become the most frequent and ongoing even to the present day. Mary emphasized to Valentine to help others learn how to pray properly. Mary said, "You must begin your prayers by offering God all that you conceal in your soul. God sees your every action and knows your every thought. You can hide nothing from him. Hold back nothing. Admit all your bad deeds and thoughts. Then you must ask for God's forgiveness from the bottom of your heart, and your sins will not distract you from praying sincerely. Then pray to forgive all of those who have trespassed against you. Pray for the spiritual and physical welfare of your relatives. You must ask God for strength to do his will. Pray for courage and wisdom to stay on the right path," unquote. All right. Any reactions to all that? That's all right. Very nice the way she's asking for all these things. And, of course, we've heard it before with other apparitions, very familiar messages indeed. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that doesn't match with the Bible, just all in keeping, very consistent. And so we've got 4 visionaries now. We've got the first one, Alphonsine, then this scholarly student, Anathalie, and then the heckler, Marie Claire, turned good. And now we've got Valentine. And now we've got another one. Stephanie, age 14, saw Mary for the first time on May 25th, 1982, while still in grade school, and was teased, like the others, by her classmates. Her messages from Mary emphasized placing God above everything, praying honestly, and resisting temptations, quote, that Satan places in front of you, unquote, that will, quote, bring people to his darkness, unquote. And then, first of all, any comments or any other thoughts?
Mary's calling for conversion. She's calling for people to change their hearts and to follow God's will. It's the Nineveh moment.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome.
It's an interesting quote that says that will bring people into his darkness. Regular darkness is bad enough. This is worse.
Oh, yeah.
She makes a distinction between regular darkness and his darkness. In other words, Satan's darkness.
And in my research about hell, all the people who experienced it said it's like a living darkness. It's alive. They can feel the evil in the darkness as much as people in heaven can feel the love in the light. So think about that. Love in the light, evil in the darkness. And you can feel that whichever place you're in. And so many times people would say, it's like this darkness is so thick and impenetrable, and it's alive. It's alive. So that's a scary thought indeed. It's not just dark. It's the worst kind of darkness you can imagine. And it's a good reminder to all of us. All of our behaviors count. Every thought, every action, everything we do, is noticed. It's a little scary to think that, but it's true, and this comes up often. Go ahead, Kathy.
That makes me think of the 3 days of darkness when there's supposed to be thick darkness like that, and only the blessed candles will burn of people who are in the state of grace. And it's going to be, it'd be like hell unleashed on earth. And there'll be,
right.
Like demons screaming through the air trying to lure you out.
Yep, that's right. Pretending to be people that you know and wanting you to open the door. All of that. Poisonous air, all sorts of things. But St. Michael and the archangels and all that do their battle too. And we know who wins.
Well, some people think that screaming has already started. It's called TV.
Yeah. Well,
TV, yeah.
At least if it does start to happen, we will all be informed and understand what's going on compared to people who have no clue whatsoever, not a clue what to do or what is going on. So Mary said, those who believe in Jesus and follow have nothing to worry about. Just be faithful, be true, and confess your sins and stay true and pray, and do these things to help yourself. But, she said over and over, please don't worry, don't fret, don't get all out of sorts with this, because you're the people who are going to be okay. You're paying attention, you're hearing this, you're wanting to know about it. And that's a lot different than so many people on this planet that could care less about religion and don't believe in God and hateful, mean, cruel, horrible, abusive. This we go on and on. It's just horrible out there. And we're not saying that we're perfect either, but at least we're trying. We're trying. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and do just one more here. On August 4th, 1982, Agnes, age 21, had her first visions. And by the way, we have about 8 visionaries when we get done. So now we're up to Agnes. Lying on her bed in her room, she began feeling an intense happiness. It caused her to start giggling and laughing so loudly that it woke her parents. Then the Virgin Mary emerged from a spectacular glowing light. She was young and very beautiful, dressed in a white dress with a blue veil. The light surrounding her glowed like a crown about her head. She soon identified herself as the Immaculate Conception. Again, like Lourdes, Mary says, I am the Immaculate Conception. She told Agnes to start praying the rosary, and when she did, they were both transported to a beautiful field of flowers with a crystal ship floating in the stars above. 2 nights later, her bedroom filled with light again, and Mary revealed to her that she was, quote, the Mother from Heaven. This time she pointed down to the ground where a dark pool, like an enormous puddle of black ink, was spreading across the ground. Agnes was afraid of being sucked down into it. And Mary said, that is where people dwell who remain enveloped in the death of sin. My son has a mission for you. You are to lead the young people away from the darkness of sin and back into his light. All right. So I'll stop there for right now. Any comments on that last bit?
What is that ship in the sky, a crystal ship?
I don't know. I've never heard that before, but it was just a magical place. It sounded like heaven with a beautiful field of flowers, but then a crystal ship floating in the stars above. I have no idea what that means. I'm just quoting what she said. But the rest of it is very familiar. The bright light, Mary appearing and telling her who she is, and then pointing to that enormous puddle of black ink on the ground spreading. And she was kind of giving her a vision, kind of like she gave the Fatima children a glimpse of hell. She said that is where people dwell who will remain enveloped in the death of sin. So she was also showing her the darkness as well as the brilliant, beautiful heavenly lights and whatever you want to call that she saw. But anyway,
John,
impressive. Yes.
In looking over some of these apparitions, it's also very interesting to see what else was happening in the world at about the same time. And 1981 through 1989 was the presidency of Ronald Reagan. One of the many speeches that Mr. Reagan made as president was to the Portuguese legislature, and he mentioned Fatima.
This belief in human dignity suggests the final truth upon which democracy is based. A belief that human beings are not just another part of the material universe, not just mere bundles of atoms. We believe in another dimension, a spiritual side to man. We find a transcendent source for our claims to human freedom, our suggestion that inalienable rights come from one greater than ourselves. No one has done more to remind the world of the truth of human dignity, as well as the truth that peace and justice begins with each of us, than the special man who came to Portugal a few years ago after a terrible attempt on his life. He came here to Fatima, the site of your great religious shrine, to fulfill his special devotion to Mary, to plead for forgiveness and compassion among men, to pray for peace and the recognition of human dignity throughout the world. When I met Pope John Paul II a year ago in Alaska, I thanked him for his life and his apostolate. And I dared to suggest to them the example of men like himself, and in the prayers of simple people everywhere, simple people like the children of Fatima, there resides more power than in all the great armies and statesmen of the world.
That was President Reagan, probably somewhere during the time that these apparitions and events were happening.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
There's like a link between Reagan and John Paul II. They both had their life attempted on that same year, didn't they?
Yeah. Reagan's was 1981. I think it was March 30th, 1981. He had just taken office. He was leaving the Washington Hilton after a speech to some labor unions.
And I think Pope John Paul II was May 13th, Fatima, 1981.
Oh, I didn't realize that was 81.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
That's very interesting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We still think they're two isolated incidents, and they may not be.
Yeah, and Medjugorje began in 1981. So
as did this series.
Right. No. No. Anyway, so we're going to stop there tonight, and we'll again return to Kibeho, Rwanda, and have the rest of the story next week. We actually might have to go another week after that because we got a lot of messages and very interesting things we'll have a spinning sun. We'll have all sorts of miracles and fascinating things yet to come. But we got a good start on it tonight to meet the visionaries and some of them and hear how it all came about. And I just love the little twists of things that happen to make it real for everybody, and us included. A wonderful story. And again, all of it would have been lost because with that genocide, some of them were killed, many files were lost, many research things were lost, and thanks to Immaculée Ilibagiza, she had managed to stay in touch with someone who had preserved much of the information and recordings and stuff, and then she linked up with some of the visionaries as well and got their stories, and she barely escaped with her life. That's a whole nother story in itself. And then we're lucky that she can write this up and we can hear all about this. Otherwise, none of this would we know about. So, and yet it took till like 2010 for her book to come out. So think, this is 1981. 2010, the story finally comes out in great detail. So it just shows you how it can take a long time to really find out what's going on in some places around the world. But we'll get to that next week. So I thank you too. We are going to do our Hail Mary around the world. And I'm going to mute you guys, and we will say our prayers. Any last words before we do that?
Just thanks for being there, John and Mike, and have a good evening.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. We're always glad you show up, and please return next week because with Donald out and Judy no longer with us and John's having his issues in Virginia, you know, there's just a few of us keeping things going, but I will never quit, so I'm glad you guys joined me. Thank you for that. All right. So, everyone around the world to join with me now and say a Hail Mary. All our voices will rise in unison, and heaven will hear us. Just imagine that, all the voices around the world at the same moment saying together, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. And God bless every one of you who tuned in tonight, and appreciate your listening, and hopefully it was helpful to you. And join us next week, because this story isn't over and there's much more to come. And with that, I will say good night and thank you all for being here.